Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast. It's episode 227. This week, we're going to look at building a high-value property network, how to avoid the mistakes that we see all the time, and build a network that will rocket your success.
Yes, welcome to the Property Podcast. Good to have you back. Networking is one of those things that everyone's kind of aware that they should be doing. They're aware that it's really important, but often don't because they don't know how, or they get to a certain point, but they're nervous about going to people at the very top, the people who you really want to make contact with, who could really help you out. That's what we're focusing on today, how to build a high-value property network. We see a lot of networking going on around us with the meetups and everything else. So we see what works and what really doesn't. We've got loads to say about this topic. So we'd better get on with it pretty quickly. But first, Rob, a quick reminder about our free course.
Yes, we've got loads to say about this topic, but we've got loads to say about most topics on property, which is quite lucky, really. And so much so that we produce courses that are free on the Property Hub. We touched on this last week, but we don't want you to miss out because they are completely free and we want you to take advantage of them. But our latest course, which helps you choose the right property strategy for you, is now available on the Property Hub. Why is it such a good course? Well, it's one of the most common questions Rob and I get. What strategy should I use? Now, there is no quick and easy answer. That's why it's a course. But if you've ever thought, am I doing the right thing? Or don't know where to even start? This course is perfect for you. So go and check it out.
Yep, it's a good one. As is our news story this week. Really interesting story. You'll find the link to this at thepropertyhub.net/strongnetwork. That's our show notes for this week. But basically, this story is reporting about a new measure that's being brought in to try to, as I say, smooth out the boom and bust cycle. A new way of valuing property to stop lenders from overlending at the peak of the cycle. Now, this is applying to the world of commercial property rather than residential. But what I find really interesting about this is it's basically acknowledging the 18-year property cycle. It actually says in the article, once every 15 to 20 years or so, the market rises up in value and then crashes dramatically. And it's proposing coming up with something called an adjusted market value that takes into account where in the cycle we are. So if your property is worth a certain amount, but you're like, well, I can see that things are getting overheated, you would then bring down the market value for lending purposes. So like I said, it's only for commercial property and it's only being talked about, but being talked about at a high level. There are people from the Bank of England involved. But what I think is really interesting about it, Rob, is that it's acknowledgement of the property cycle outside of, well, just us talking about it a lot.
The podcast is getting out there, Rob. It has to be us. We'll say that for our egos, but it's there to see. We've talked about it so many times now that it's not exactly hard to spot this trend, and it's easy to see it playing out again. So it is interesting that other people are talking about it and talking about it in a good way as well. As you say, it's just proposals and people talking about it rather than anything concrete right now, and it's going to relate to commercial property if anything does happen. But what's interesting is that people perceived to be high up in property are acknowledging this as well. So a really good find of a news story this week, Rob.
Yep. So like I said, you'll find the link to that story at the show notes, which are at thepropertyhub.net/strongnetwork. And a strong network is what we're going to build for you today. We're talking about how to build a high value property network. We talked about networking last, back in episode 133. You'll find a link to that episode in the show notes as well, if you want to catch up on that. In that episode, we were talking about the basics. In this episode, we're talking about how to get to people high up, how to build a high value network, how to get to the people who you really want to connect with, who can, as Rob said back at the outset, really skyrocket your success if you manage to make them part of your world. The problem with this, of course, is that the people who you want to connect with are busy and they already have their own network, so they're not motivated to get to know you. It's not the same as going to a meetup where everyone's there to get to know each other. You're highly motivated to get to a particular person, but they don't know you exist and they're not that bothered about growing their network that much more. So what do you do about it?
Well, first of all, let's look at who this could apply to. If you're thinking, well, who do I want in this high value network? Well, it could be other investors you want to learn from. So people further on than you who've been there and done it. They've got the t-shirt, but they've also learned the lessons that could save you time and money. That type of network would be incredibly valuable. So an easy one to start with. But also there are other people that you may want to network with. So estate agency owners or owners of letting agents. Rather than the person at the front desk, get the person not near the top, but at the top. Learn from them. Again, they've probably seen it all. Their knowledge and guidance will be invaluable. So to have someone like that in your network would be a big, big plus. And then, of course, there's people like brokers, accountants, architects, people who are in high demand and can be choosy. Anyone else, Rob?
Yeah, there's lots of other people this could apply to. Could apply to podcast hosts, if you want to know them. Strange people, though. Not sure about that. And everything that we'll talk about also applies to your life outside property as well. We've given some property examples because this is the Property Podcast. But if you take on board some of the lessons from this episode and you put some of this into action in your professional life, or even just people who you want to have as part of your friendship group or particular interest groups, this will work for all of those equally well.
So if you are an artist and there's somebody you really admire and want to connect with, so you can use the tips that we're about to run through to apply it there. Maybe you're a cook and there's a chef that you want to meet, or as Rob said, from a career point of view or a business point of view, people that you really look up to and aspire to. You can use it in any walk of life. We're going to talk about property, obviously, but it's going to be quite apparent that you can use this in any aspect of your life to build that power network. So let's start. Rob, what's our first tip?
Okay, so when you're starting to approach these people who you really want to get to know, the first interaction is obviously really important. First impressions count. So what do? Well, let's start with something that you don't do. The thing that you should not do is go straight in with a question. Go straight in with an ask, some kind of demand of them, something that you want them to do. It's okay to approach people out of the blue with a quick question if all you want is a quick answer and then move on. You don't really want to build a relationship with them any further. If that's what you want, that's fine. But if you want to build a relationship, it's not a good way to start. So I'll give an example. I get a lot of people emailing me as a result of the books that I've written, which is great. I absolutely love getting emails from people. Some of them are just saying thanks. Some are offering something interesting, but some of them are asking questions. And if it's just a quick question that I can give a quick answer to, and then we move on and we don't have a relationship beyond that, absolutely no problem. But some people are asking questions as what they seem to want to be more of a conversation. And sometimes it can be pretty extreme. Like I've had a few emails saying something like, "Hey Rob, really like your book. Found it really interesting. I'd like to know a bit more about how I can apply this to me. So could you give me a call, please? My number is this." And I'm just thinking, hang on a minute. Why would I take time out of everything I'm doing to call somebody and kind of coach them through what's in the book? It just doesn't make any sense. If they'd approached it in a different way and built a relationship, then maybe eventually we would get to that point. But even if I did call them, which of course I'm not going to do, I still wouldn't feel like this is the type of person who's going to add lots of value to my life because it seems like they're asking straight away. So there's nothing wrong with asking, but wait until you've earned it in some way.
Yes, it's putting yourself in the shoes of the person you're asking from, thinking about, okay, how will this apply to someone? As Rob said, we'll get lots of emails, lots of asks, and some people are really conscientious and respectful and just ask quick questions where they get quick answers, and that's super cool. But some people will ask a lot of you, like Rob said, the phone call, or they may decide to write their life story. Yes, lots of people will do that. It's true. Lots of people will write their life story. They'll send you an email that could be a mini novel telling you where they grew up, what they want to do, their plans for the future, how this will help them. And that is lovely. But in a busy day, in a busy week, in a busy life, for anybody, never mind us, but for anybody you're trying to build a network with, stopping to read somebody's life story, digest it, then deciding how you can add value to them is a big, big ask. It's more common than you think. We get a lot of these. Now, it's lovely. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely lovely. But what the people who are sending those emails are probably missing is the awareness that we get lots of emails. We run multiple businesses. We do lots of different things. And that stopping for 20 minutes, half an hour to read an email is a big ask. We appreciate it, and it's lovely that you want to, but it's still a big ask.
Yes, I think the key here is little and often. We're talking about ourselves here, not because, we are the ultimate experts who everyone wants to get in touch with, but just because it's what we know. It's what we have experience of. And in my experience, people who send a lot of brief messages are just saying thanks, contributing something useful, and do that consistently over the time are the ones whose names you get to recognize and people who you might ultimately build some kind of relationship with. Rather than the one-off novella, just a slow kind of drip over time of useful things, not particularly asking for much, offering some kind of value, tends to be far more effective. So that's 2 really useful tips, I think, for that first interaction. Don't go in with an ask until you've earned it, and little and often when you're going for that approach.
Okay, so next up, consider where you add value. Now, think about it. A lot of people will default to saying something like, "Hey, Sarah, hey, John, I'd love to take you out for a beer or a coffee and pick your brains on such a subject," whatever that may be, whatever your interest is in. Successful people will get that a lot. Now, you probably think you're being nice. You are, you're offering to buy them something. That is lovely. But think about it. Successful people can afford their own coffee and beer. And people probably buy them coffees and beers who are friends as well. A stranger approaching that way, asking to take them out for a coffee or beer, is unlikely to get that request granted. And that's because, one, they don't know what they want, how long they're going to be committing to, what this person's like if they want to spend more than 2 minutes with them. They may be the world's greatest person, but they know none of this from the request. So requests like that from people high up in networks are pretty much always instantly turned down because they can't see a value trade. An hour of their time could be worth hundreds, if not thousands of pounds per hour. Successful people can earn that type of money. So to trade it for a £4 coffee or beer isn't a good trade for them and is actually seen as high risk. So while you may be coming from a good place, and you most probably certainly are, you're not thinking, I'm doing this to take advantage. You want to offer back. Think about what you're offering back. Is there a different way you can add value?
Yeah, that's it. There's always going to be something that you can offer that's unique. It's just a case of finding out what it is. So the person you're approaching is an expert in something, or they're very well connected. There's some kind of reason why you want to get to know them because of what they do in their field. But there'll be other areas of life where you can offer something that they might want and that they don't have. So to give an example of this, I had somebody email me and say, "Hey, really like the books and the podcast. I'd love to meet you sometime. I'm the coach of the Olympic judo team." I can't remember if it's actually judo, but it was something like that. "I'm the coach of the Olympic judo team. If ever you want to come and hang out, you can come. I'll give you a tour of the facilities and you can meet the team." And I just thought, whoa, that's really cool. That's something that sounds really interesting to me. If that same person, who's probably really nice, asked me out for a coffee, I wouldn't do it. But chances are I will go and do that at some point because that sounds really fun. That way I'll get something that I want and he'll get something that he wants. So he's more likely to get the result he wants purely because he found a unique approach. And that's something that anyone can do.
But be specific where you're going to add value. So that's a clear value add. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or experience. So it's going to get your attention. You clearly know what you'll be getting as a trade for your time. One example that doesn't really work well for busy people is an intern example. So a lot of people contact me to say, can I intern for you? Or can I come and work for you? Or can I shadow you and work for free? And nearly always, because I've tried it once and learnt my lesson, nearly always now, I say no, or guide them another way, or point them to resources that will help them, or give them tips and advice. I don't ignore them, but give them advice, give them guidance on how to learn about property in more effective ways. However, a better approach would be if that intern said, rather than just say, "Can I come and work for you for a summer?" coming forward and saying, "I'd like to work for you for a summer, and I'd like to do the following things. I'm a social media expert. Here's examples of my work. I'd like to implement these things because I've noticed that you're not currently doing this particular thing, and I feel it'll add tremendous value for you. If I could do this in one of your offices, shadow people who are more experienced than me, and occasionally get some of your time, that would be super valuable to me. Would you be interested in that?" Then that is a really impressive offer. Whether the transaction is something you want or not, the thought and the effort that's gone into that is superb. Because if somebody just goes, "Can I intern for you?" you've got to think about, well, what can they do for me? You've got to then engage your brain. Okay, so someone wants to come in. I want to keep them stimulated. I want it to be valuable for them. What am I going to do? And because you start thinking that way, the effort levels start building up. You don't know what their skills are. You don't know what their personality type's like. You don't know exactly how you're going to fill their days, so the request tends to be denied. But if you come in from that different approach, it might not be guaranteed, and this applies obviously to anyone. I'm not just talking about the businesses we have. But if anybody approaches that way, then they're going to stand a far better chance of success. And we've talked about applying for jobs and stuff in the past as well. It's the effort. It's that extra effort that goes a long way, but it applies for interns as well. You'd think just giving away your time for free over a summer would be enough. But actually, for most busy, successful people, it isn't. And it's not because of it being mean. It's just that you're still relying on them to do a lot of thinking and a lot of effort to find something for you to do.
I think that's a really important point. It's kind of natural to think like, wow, if I'm giving up my time for free, that is something of value. And yes, it is. But the point that you're missing is that busy people have lots of decisions to make every day. And if by being non-specific, you're asking them to put a lot of thought into something, work out if it could make sense for them, work out how to make it work, then it's going to be easier for them to just ignore it. Your job is to make it easier for them to just say yes. So consider where you do add value and make it clear. Show where you add value. That's the point of all that. Related to that, another good tip is to share what you're learning. Sharing in general is great because people come to you. Look at us in this podcast. I'm an extremely lazy networker, but I know a lot of people. Because of the podcast, people come to me. You can achieve the same thing in a lot of different ways. For example, on the Property Hub, we've got a progress journals section. And in that, there are some absolutely fantastic journals. You should actually go and check it out if you haven't before. You see people chronicling their entire property journey, showing what they're doing at every point. And these aren't people saying, yeah, I bought this property and it was fantastic. And then I went and did this and we made a fortune. It's people talking about starting from the absolute beginning, setting their strategy, going to lots of viewings, having offers turned down, having things fall through. These aren't overnight success stories that make you think, wow, this person is amazing. I really must go and get to know them. But they're showing that these people are taking action, which we'll come to, but also showing that these people know something that's valuable. So for example, somebody might just be getting started, be very new in terms of property, but because they've lived in an area all their life, they know that area extremely well. That knowledge comes out as a result of the Progress Journal, and therefore other people from the forum will get in touch if they want to know something about that area. And I know that this happens. I know that some of the more experienced people on the hub, people who've got hundreds of posts that have done loads and loads of stuff, will make contact with newer members, even if that newer member is only just getting started, because they've either shared something about a particular area or they've touched on a particular area of knowledge that they clearly have. So it's a really easy way of showing expertise without necessarily even knowing that you're showing it. And it means that sometimes people who you really want to get to know, but you don't know you want to get to know, will come to you.
And you can extend this further. People there are showing that they're action takers. They're doing stuff and they're documenting it. And that's a really powerful tool. Don't underestimate that last tool. But by showing you're an action taker, if you start to build a network with someone or a relationship with someone and they've given you some simple advice, show that you've acted on it. Say, thank you, so-and-so. Just wanted to let you know I did these things and here are the results. Maybe not ask again right there and then, but just let people know that you followed up, you did something, and it gave you those benefits. Briefly, those type of people will stick out because lots of people put an ask in and then put another ask in and then put another ask in. While lots of people will be respectful, ask a question, get the answer and move on. The ones who are trying to build relationships by constantly asking questions, which we've talked about being a poor way of achieving the result you want, they never actually come back and say, oh, I did this thing with this information and here was the great result. People love to know that their help and guidance has been useful to you. So by you acknowledging that and just a quick thank you, and letting people know what was achieved goes a long way. You think about it, the podcast reviews, the ones we get most excited about are the ones where people tell us that they've taken action because we think, wow, okay, we're making a difference. This podcast is making a difference. And that means so much more to us than, yes, we love the thank yous and we absolutely do love that. But when people tell us that, you know, thanks for the podcast or the courses or whatever else we've put out for free, and I've did these things with that, just makes you really, really happy. So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It is a big one. And we said at the start that this applies to other areas of life as well as property. And I've had this work for me in other areas of life. I've emailed people who are really well known in a particular field of business or marketing or something like that. People who will get hundreds or thousands of emails a day. I've emailed them and I've just said, hey, I really enjoyed this blog post of yours, for example. I implemented it and here's what happened. And that's all I do. I don't ask anything. I just say, thank you for writing that. And here's a result that I got. And I always get a great reply, which I wouldn't get if I was asking a question or just telling my life story, or probably even just saying thanks without saying what I did with it. Okay, so what else can you do? How else can you build this high value network? Well, another thing that you can do is buy your network. And by that, I mean attend events that you have to pay for. It sounds crude and crass, but it's true. Money is a good filter. For example, if you go onto meetup.com or Eventbrite, you'll find lots and lots of events for entrepreneurs, for example. And I've been to some of these in my time. You'll go along and there'll be maybe 50 people, and they'll all be just getting started with what they're doing. So yes, they'll all have something to offer, but in that context, you tend not to learn about it and everyone's relatively new. If you pay to go to an event, you pay a couple £100 or more, the people who you get there are absolutely in a completely different world in terms of what they've achieved, in terms of mindset and what they're trying to do. The fact that you have to pay for something filters out a heck of a lot of people. And almost by definition, the people there are higher value. That might not be something that seems fair or that you're comfortable with, but it's absolutely true. Another great thing about paying for events is that you get to have a shared experience with the people who you're there with. You get to spend a lot of time together. So say that you pay to go to a full day event or even a weekend or something like that. You're going to spend loads of time there. It's not like you're just having a fleeting conversation. With that group, you'll have lots of time. You'll have a shared experience, which is really important for forming a bond. And as a result, you're far more likely to both have meaningful conversations there, but also to follow up and to stay in touch afterwards. So it's not something that's going to be appropriate for everyone or in every situation, but buying the network, going to these paid events can be extremely powerful.
So once you've done all this brilliant work and the results are paying off and you've started to grow this high-value network, don't leave it there, because guess what? These high-value people tend to know other high-value people, and they can introduce you to others. Now remember, don't go straight in for the ask. Remember all the lessons before. But by this point, you probably know what you're doing. So ultimately, once you've started, get people to introduce you to others and always look for an opportunity to do the same for them. So it's not just, again, the taking, it's the giving. So remember that it's a lot of it is in the giving. Now, this episode isn't about, look at us, we got lots of emails and calls and requests. It's far, far from it. Nobody really takes the time to tell you these things. And people always wonder why they don't get responses, why they get rejections, and don't get to build these networks with these people. That's why we're telling you. We want to help you to build relationships with people in fields that are of interest to you. So please don't see it as us going on an ego journey. It's absolutely the complete opposite. It's to help and guide you so you can take advantage of these tips and build a much better network.
Yeah, like we said, we're only giving examples about ourselves because that's what we know. We see what works with us, and what works with us probably works with other people too. And we have seen many of these things work for us when we're trying to get to people who we want to get to, whether that's in property or business or anything else. This stuff really works. And the great thing is, it doesn't really take any more time than what you're already doing. Maybe it takes a little bit more thought and a little bit more creativity, but for practically the same investment of time, you will get far, far, far better results. So give some of these a go. And then, of course, like we said, please let us know about the success you've had.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Oh, good end, Rob. Good end. Well, it's not quite the end, because we have a new event, or rather an event that we've done before, but we've leveled up. We've made it better. Yes, it's our summits. So the summits we've done in the past, we've had lots of people in the room, and we had an all mix of levels, some beginners, some people a little bit more advanced. And we had 16 to 20 people in a room and we guided them. We've changed this now. We're still only doing 4 events a year, but we're bringing it down to 8 people per session. Now, we're only going to do the summits twice more this year. 1 in Manchester, 1 in London, and the dates are available. And in fact, we popped the dates up a couple of weeks ago without really mentioning it, and a lot of places have started to go already, particularly in the London one. If you are interested, go and have a look. It is for people who've are already investors. So it's that opportunity to buy that network, because that day you'll go away with other people who are like-minded and in a similar position to yourself. So there is a basic qualification there. But remember, if you're still new and you can't do it yet, don't worry. It's not like we don't want to help. We've got hundreds of podcasts for you and plenty of free courses. But for those people who want to maybe take one of our tips, which is buy your network, go and check out the summit page, thepropertyhub.net/summit, and find out a little bit more about what we've got planned for this new event.
Yep, do check that out. And especially check out the Manchester event. Even if you're actually from London, you might find it useful to get up to Manchester and get to know people up there, and to take it as an opportunity to get out and about and see some stuff, because as we've said before, Manchester is where it's happening right now. So that is the summit. We look forward to seeing you at one of those, and we also always look forward to reading out an iTunes review. So Rob, what have we got this week?
Okay, we've got B12345, who says, the best property podcast in the UK market, bar none. Rob and Rob have such a wonderful and even melodic way of delivering succinct, relevant and valuable property investing information. I've learned so much and look forward to the new podcast. Thanks. As that's a short one, I'll fit another short one from Jezzy99, who says, really great podcast, and it gives young property investors the knowledge to start securing a better financial future. Thanks, Rob and Rob. Well, thank you, B, and thank you, Jezzy, for your reviews.
Yeah, I think it's the first time we've ever been called melodic. Quite like that. Moronic maybe, but melodic is a new one. Quite like that. Okay, so onwards to the resource of the week. And Rob, you've got a new friend in the office with you.
I have. I've got a new assistant in the office. Pounds per hour is 0. Paid a little bit of money up front. And she keeps me entertained. Before people's imaginations go wild, let me introduce Alexa. And Rob, most importantly, Alexa tells jokes. Alexa, tell me a joke.
What is black and white and red all over?
I don't know.
A sunburned zebra.
Hey! Jokes are as good as ours, Rob. It's worth the 80 quid alone. So that's an Amazon Echo for those who don't know. Amazon Echoes are pretty cool. I've got a few Sonos systems in the house, but I wanted one for my home office. And for £80 when it was on sale, I thought, why not? It plays music. I won't do that now, but it does play music as well. So as a music system, it's pretty cool, but it can tell me my commute, it can tell me my calendar schedule, it can tell me the weather, it correctly forecasts the weather for where Rob is at the moment, which is Rotterdam. So it's a pretty impressive tool. It's pretty cool. So one to check out. I thought it might be a bit of a novelty, but I'm actually finding it really useful. And for the audio aspect alone, it can play my audiobooks and my music. I find it, for that sort of money, for around £100, it's pretty good value.
Yeah, I've seen the adverts for it, and I've always thought of it as a bit of a pointless novelty. But when you factor in the fact that it can play music as well, that's great. And mainly it's the jokes that have won me over. I'm not going to get one, because if I did, I would just sit there all day saying, tell me a joke, tell me a joke, tell me a joke, and wouldn't get anything done. But it's pretty cool, and it's kind of scary when you think how much more intelligent and useful systems like that are going to get over the next 5-10 years. It's exciting stuff.
It really is. Nearly as exciting as next week's episode, which is tips to make you and save you money in property. So Rob and I bashed our heads together, and we managed to come up with several tips that will either help you make money or save you money. That will be very much a valuable episode, a good trade of 30 minutes of your time.
Yes, indeed. So we'll be doing that next Thursday, and on Tuesday we will be trading you about 10 minutes of your time for 2 answers to your burning questions with Ask Rob and Rob. So we'll see you very soon for both of those. In the meantime, enjoy your week and have fun.
Rob, shall we have our new assistant to close the show?
Yeah, go on then.
Alexa, play Goodbye by the Spice Girls.
Goodbye by Spice Girls from Spotify.
Okay, I think we better kill it there, Rob. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Alexa, stop. Please stop.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.